The last winter in Vienna. The snow fell softly on the cobblestone streets of Vienna as Elena stepped off the train at West Bahnhof station. She clutched her worn leather suitcase, her breath forming small clouds in the frozen air. It had been 3 years since she left this city. 3 years since she walked away from the only person who ever truly understood the silence in her soul. She told herself she was here for work for the architecture conference, but deep down she knew the truth. She was here because Thomas had written to her, not with words on paper, but through a painting that arrived at her London flat without warning or explanation. The painting showed their bench in Stat Park covered in autumn leaves, and in the corner, barely visible, were 2 intertwined initials carved into the wood. She had spent an entire night staring at it, remembering the afternoon they sat there as thunder rolled across the Vienna sky, when he told her that some loves are not meant to be captured, only felt in moments that burn too bright to last. Elena checked into a small hotel near the Ringstrasse, the same neighborhood where they used to walk for hours, discussing everything from Kafka to the meaning of belonging. She wondered if he still lived in that narrow apartment on Burgas, the one with the slanted ceiling where he painted by candlelight because he said electric lights killed the shadows that gave his work depth. The conference was scheduled to begin tomorrow, but tonight she found herself walking toward Burgas despite every rational part of her mind screaming to turn back. The street looked different in winter, harsher somehow, less forgiving. She stopped in front of his building, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain it would wake the entire neighborhood. The lights were off in his apartment. Perhaps he had moved. Perhaps he had forgotten. Perhaps the painting meant nothing at all. She turned to leave when she heard a voice that made her entire body freeze. Elena! It was not a question. Thomas stood at the corner of the street, his dark coat dusted with snowflakes, his eyes holding that same intensity that used to unravel her completely. He looked older, thinner, as if the years had carved away everything except what was essential. "You came," he said quietly. "I should not have, but you did." They stood there in the cold, 2 people who once shared everything, now separated by 3 years of silence and all the words that were never spoken. She wanted to ask him why he sent the painting, why he brought her back to this city that held too many ghosts. But instead she just looked at him, memorizing the way snowflakes melted in his dark hair. "Walk with me," he said, and she followed because she always followed, even when she knew the path led nowhere good. They walked through the quiet streets, past the shuttered cafes and empty tram stops, neither speaking. Finally, they reached Stat Park, and there was the bench from the painting, now covered in fresh snow. Thomas brushed it off, and they sat, just as they had countless times before. I tried to forget you, Elena said, her voice barely a whisper. I went to London. I built a career. I even dated someone for 8 months. I did everything right. But every time I designed a building, I would think about what you said. That architecture is just frozen music. And I would wonder if you still believed that. Thomas stared ahead at the frozen pond. I painted you every day for 2 years. Different versions, different moments. Elena laughing. Elena angry. Elena sleeping in my bed with the morning sun across your face. I painted until I ran out of canvas, until I ran out of money, until I ran out of ways to capture something that was already gone. My gallerist told me I was becoming obsessed with a ghost. Maybe I was. Then why did you send me the painting? He turned to her then, and she saw something in his eyes that terrified her. It was not hope or longing or even love. It was resignation, because I am dying, Elena. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors give me 3 months, maybe 4 if I am lucky, though I am not sure luck has ever been on my side when it matters. The world stopped. The snow stopped. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. Elena felt something crack open inside her chest, something she had kept locked away since the day she boarded that train to London. No, she whispered. No, that cannot be true. I wish it was not. I have spent the last month deciding whether to tell you, whether to bring you back into this mess. But I realized I could not leave this world without seeing you one more time, without telling you that leaving you was the worst thing I ever did, and the most necessary. You deserved someone who could give you stability, a future, children, all the things I was too selfish and too broken to provide. But I never stopped loving you, not for a single moment. Elena felt tears streaming down her face, hot against her frozen skin. You're telling me this now? After 3 years of nothing, you bring me here to watch you die? Thomas reached for her hand, his fingers ice cold. I am telling you because I want you to know that you were not some chapter in my life. Elena, you were the entire book. Everything before you was just the preface, and everything after has been blank pages I cannot bring myself to fill. I sent you that painting because I needed you to know that what we had was real, even if it could not last. She pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. This is cruel. Thomas, this is unbelievably cruel. You do not get to do this. You do not get to make me love you all over again when there is no time left. I know. Then why? Because I am a coward. Because I am selfish. because even dying, I could not let you go without trying to explain that leaving you destroyed me, and staying would have destroyed you. There was no good choice. Elena, there was only pain. And I chose the version where at least one of us might have a chance at happiness. Elena sank back onto the bench, her entire body shaking. Did you ever think that maybe I did not want happiness without you? Did you ever consider that maybe I was strong enough to handle your struggles, your darkness, whatever demons you thought you were protecting me from? Every day. But by then it was too late. You had already left, and I had already pushed you away, and there was no going back. They sat in silence as the snow continued to fall, covering the world in white. Finally, Elena spoke, her voice steady despite the tears. I will stay, for however long you have. I will stay. Thomas shook his head. You cannot do that. You have a life in London, a career, a future. I had a future in Vienna too. Once. I walked away from it. Let me choose to walk back. Elena, you do not understand what you are saying. The cancer, the treatment, it will not be beautiful or poetic. It will be hospital rooms and pain and watching me become someone you do not recognize. I do not care. I have spent 3 years pretending I do not love you, and I am tired of pretending. If all we have is 3 months, then give me 3 months. Do not make that decision for me. Thomas looked at her with such profound sadness that it almost broke her. I cannot let you do this. You already did, the moment you sent that painting. You brought me here knowing what it would mean, knowing what you were asking me to choose. So let me choose. The weeks that followed were the strangest of Elena's life. She canceled her conference commitments and found a short-term rental near Thomas's apartment. They fell into a routine that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. She would arrive in the mornings with coffee and pastries from the bakery he loved, and they would spend hours talking about nothing and everything. Some days he felt strong enough to paint, and she would sit in the corner of his studio, watching him work with the same fierce concentration she remembered. Other days he could barely get out of bed, and she would read to him from the books they once shared, her voice filling the silence. They did not speak about the future because there was no future to speak of. They existed only in the present, in these stolen moments that felt both infinite and desperately short. Thomas's gallerist visited once a sharply dressed woman named Helga, who looked at Elena with a mixture of pity and disapproval. She tried to convince Thomas to complete one final collection for a spring exhibition, but he refused. "I am not interested in legacy," he told her. "I am interested in today." Elena met his younger sister, Sophia, who flew in from Berlin with her 2 children. Sophia hugged Elena tightly and whispered, "Thank you for being here. He never stopped talking about you. Even when he pretended, he had moved on." The children called Thomas Uncle Tommy and brought chaos and laughter into the apartment, a brief respite from the weight of what was coming. One evening in late February, as they sat in his apartment with candles flickering against the walls, Thomas asked Elena the question she had been dreading. "Do you regret coming back?" She considered lying, considered giving him peace. But they had never lied to each other, not even when the truth carved them open. Every single day, she said, "I regret it because it hurts more than I thought possible. I regret it because I know how this ends, and there is nothing I can do to change it. I regret it because loving you was supposed to be in my past, and now it is my present, and it will define my future in ways I cannot even comprehend yet. But I would make the same choice again. Thomas, I would choose this pain over the emptiness of not knowing, of not being here." He reached for her hand, his grip weaker than it had been even a week ago. "You always were braver than me." "No, I am just better at accepting that some things cannot be fixed or saved or made right. They just are." March arrived with the first hints of spring, but Thomas was fading fast. The doctors said it was happening quicker than expected, that his body was giving up. Elena spent entire days at the hospital, holding his hand as machines beeped and nurses came and went with expressions of practiced sympathy. Sophia stayed for a week, but had to return to Berlin for her children. She cried when she said goodbye to her brother, both of them knowing it was the last time. On a gray afternoon, when the rain fell like tears against the hospital window, Thomas opened his eyes and looked at Elena with sudden clarity. "I need you to promise me something. Anything. When I am gone, I need you to live. Really live. Not this half-existence where you are waiting for something that will never come. Find someone who makes you laugh, who gives you the future I could not. Do not turn me into a tragedy you carry forever." Elena felt her throat tighten. "How can you ask me that?" "Because I love you enough to want more for you than grief. Promise me." "Elena!" She wanted to refuse, to tell him that he had no right to dictate how she mourned him, but she saw the desperation in his eyes, and she could not deny him this last thing. I promise." He smiled then, a shadow of the smile she fell in love with so many years ago. "Thank you for everything, for coming back, for choosing the pain, for loving me when I did not deserve it. You always deserved it," she whispered. "You just never believed it." Thomas closed his eyes, his breathing shallow. Elena held his hand and watched the rain and felt her heart break in slow motion. He died 3 days later, just as the cherry blossoms began to bloom in Stat Park. Elena was there, holding his hand, whispering words he could no longer hear. The moment he stopped breathing, she felt something fundamental shift in the universe, as if the world had lost some essential color or sound that could never be replaced. The funeral was small, attended by Sophia and her family, a handful of Thomas's artist friends, and Helga the gallerist, who wept openly despite her polished exterior. They buried him in Zentralfriedhof Cemetery under a gray sky that refused to offer even the comfort of sun. Elena stood at the graveside long after everyone else had left, staring at the fresh earth and wondering how you say goodbye to someone who took a piece of your soul with them. She stayed in Vienna for another week, packing up Thomas's apartment with Sophia's help. They found dozens of paintings of Elena hidden in his studio, each one capturing a different moment, a different mood. Sophia insisted Elena take them all. "He would want you to have them," she said. The last night before her flight back to London, Elena returned to the bench in Stat Park. She sat in the exact spot where he told her he was dying, where she chose to stay, where everything changed and nothing changed at all. She traced her fingers over the carved initials in the wood, worn now by weather and time. She thought about his final request, his desperate plea for her to live and love again. She thought about the promise she made and wondered if it was one she could keep. The truth was, she did not know. She did not know how to be Elena without Thomas in the world, without the possibility of running into him on a Vienna street, without the knowledge that somewhere in this city, someone was painting her from memory. The cherry blossoms fell around her like snow, delicate and temporary, and heartbreakingly beautiful. She understood now what Thomas meant all those years ago when he said some loves are not meant to be captured, only felt in moments that burn too bright to last. They had burned bright, the two of them. They had burned until there was nothing left but ash and memory, and a painting of a bench covered in autumn leaves. Elena stood and walked away from Stat Park for the last time, carrying with her the weight of a love that was never quite whole, a story without a happy ending, and the terrible, beautiful knowledge that she had chosen this. She had chosen to come back, to love him in his dying, to live through the pain of losing him all over again, Tomorrow she would return to London. Tomorrow she would try to rebuild a life from the ruins. Tomorrow she would begin the impossible task of keeping her promise. But tonight she was still in Vienna, still holding on to the ghost of what they were, still believing that despite everything, despite the grief and the loss and the unbearable finality of death, loving Thomas Adler had been worth every moment of pain, even the last one,